aerospace and defense manufacturing,
machines and automation,
additive manufacturing,
smart manufacturing,
global manufacturing economy.
Welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals, powered by SME. From the design screen to the shop floor to final assembly, we drive the conversation about making manufacturing smarter by connecting people who are passionate about manufacturing.
Hello, and welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get new episodes delivered to your feed each week. I'm your host, Steve Plumb, Editor-in-Chief of SME Media. So I'm joined today by Deb Volzer, who joined SME about 3 years ago as the Strategic Partners Director for Workforce Development, a subject in which she has extensive experience at leading organizations such as Wiley Education, Bellwether College Consortium, Wisewire Learning, and Ohio State University. At SME, Deb spearheaded the launch of the Manufacturing Imperative Workforce Pipeline Challenge, which recently celebrated its first anniversary, including the just-released publication of the new Impact Report. We're going to dive into some of the results, but first I wanted to welcome you to the show, Deb. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here.
So the name of the program kind of sums up what's been impacting the manufacturing industry for quite some time. Most everyone these days is facing a workforce challenge. We're all aware of the stark data and forecasts. There are more than 600,000 open manufacturing positions in the U.S., and the number is projected to grow to as many as 4 million by 2030. So with that in mind, tell us a little bit more about the Manufacturing Imperative and the Workforce Pipeline Challenge program.
Sure. Well, we started by having a name that we think really represents what we're trying to do, but it is a mouthful. So for most of it, I'll probably just call it the MI-WPC. But really the impetus for launching this program was on the urgency of manufacturing and workforce development in the face of economic and demographic shifts. So knowing that manufacturing is key to U.S. resiliency, competitiveness, and national security, and reshoring of our manufacturing might is really crucial. SME, I believe, representing the voice of manufacturing across our nation, really knew that we needed to step up. So understanding that workforce shortages through skill deficit are faced by manufacturing industries, we knew we needed to optimize and really look at the initiative to launch a research-based solution that was thoughtfully designed to bring community colleges, policymakers, state and local governments, and industry leaders together to create workforce models that are responsive to both the employer's needs and to the learner needs.
So, identifying the problem is the first step and developing a plan next. But obviously, it's not as easy as all that. So what are some of the challenges that you faced in putting this together?
Well, there's a lot of challenges in putting this together. If it were easy, somebody would have solved against this. But let me tell you, one of the first challenges that comes to mind is choosing our colleges. So as I mentioned, SME was purposeful in the design of this program as we wanted to ensure that we had the breadth of manufacturing sector represented. And that meant including industries such as EV and semiconductors as example, as well as all of the other traditional manufacturing sectors. So our first step was really identifying the states where manufacturing is a key driver of GDP.
And we're in 17 states right now, or?
We are in 17 states right now. And we also wanted to make sure that those states had colleges that were open to leaning in on this initiative. So there are so many amazing programs out there across our nation's community college. It was really our goal to harness these pockets of innovation and successes, but also to build net new pathways to employment for replication and scaling across our nation and even beyond our current manufacturing imperative colleges. In addition to the sharing of these current promising practices, we also challenged our colleges, communities, our industry partners to think creatively and boldly to innovate solutions that address the skills gap faced by our local and our nation's manufacturing industry. So one of the last challenges I'll just bring in there is that I also want to mention that we not only hold our colleges responsible for helping to make this pivot into the right kind of skill development. We also hold our industry partners accountable as well. And we ask our employer partners to become employers of choice, which requires them to assess their needs of their incumbent workers as well as their incoming talent. And this requires us to hold not only our industry partners, not only our colleges, but also our state, our local, and our federal partners accountable to adjusting or creating the appropriate policies that drive workforce participation.
Now, initially, this is a 3-year program, correct? And
Correct.
were there, a timeline set up or goals for the first year and beyond?
Yeah, and I just want to make it really clear to this audience that this initiative really was a challenge. We called it the Manufacturing Imperative Workforce Pipeline Challenge, and we wanted to really stretch our opportunity to really make an impact into the needs that we had across our nation and to support manufacturers. And we had a clear goal of increasing enrollment by 1,000 individuals per year per college in STEM and manufacturing related programs. And we also had the goal of changing the narrative around manufacturing career opportunities. We really felt like for this program, the only way that we could do this was to engage the entire pipeline and the entire community. So this included outreach and engagement to all populations. So if you think about it, all the way from K-12 to veterans to justice-involved individuals and those adults who were sitting on the sideline of education and employment, we needed to make sure that our colleges knew how best to engage them, what programs best align to the needs of those different populations, and how we then translated that skill development to employers and made sure that employers were ready to receive a longer-term pipeline and that short-term pipeline to get individuals back from that community into the workforce in advanced manufacturing.
You mentioned industry partners, and I know Blue Forge Alliance is one of them, and some of the federal agencies. Can you talk a little bit more about the partnership roles?
Sure, we have many partners who are supporting this. We started out with actually the U.S. Department of Education as a supporter of this program and really highlighted this up through the Domestic Policy Commission for the president, our former administration. And we really aligned this to the manufacturing sprint of that administration. We're continuing to see alignment with the new administration, and we're excited to work to make sure that we're continuing our efforts. So Blue Forge Alliance, as example, is a really great partner that is investing in this program to make sure that we can bring not only what SME has in our resources, but also their ability to address the maritime industrial base and the submarine industrial base, knowing that that is a critical workforce need for our nation, kind of referencing back to our resiliency, our competitiveness, but most importantly, our national security. And so by aligning with those national and federal partners, understanding where policy is going, where investments are going, how can we make sure that we are building a economically vibrant manufacturing community, it's critical that we bring all of those partners together and we ensure our program then aligns to efforts that are happening both at local, federal, and even state levels.
You mentioned SME's resources and capabilities. Obviously, workforce development is a key initiative as you're part of that team. What is Tooling U SME's involvement?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And as part of our commitment to our participating college, SME is committed to providing those resources and insights that align to our goals. And as such, one of our 25 colleges have access to Tooling U SME. And I really just want to make it very clear that we really felt this was important because it removes financial barriers to the college and to the learners, allowing the college to test new delivery and deployment models with industry vetted and aligned curriculum. So in 1 year, we had 14,000 courses that were completed with 20 of our 25 colleges testing or leveraging Tooling U SME content and really supporting learner pathways aligned to the needs of their community.
So looking at the report, I noticed that there are 3 advisory councils, which I imagine helped identify some of the challenges and set some of the benchmarks moving forward and develop some of the programs. But can you elaborate a little bit more on the councils?
Absolutely happy to. And we lovingly call them the PAC, the CAC, and the MAC. The PAC is our President's Advisory Council, and that really is made up of the presidents of our 25 community colleges who come together quarterly, and we discuss things such as policies or funding that are impacting their ability to drive innovation on their campuses. It could be talking about addressing those policy issues and SME, elevating those up to our federal partners, or it could be just the sharing of best practices or mitigation strategies that one of our colleges has, found great success with. It's that sharing that across the leadership of our 25 colleges. The Manufacturing Association Advisory Council, that being our MAC, we knew we had to have industry at the table, and specifically small to mid-sized manufacturers and the voice of those manufacturers present. And so for each one of our states, we invited the state association representing manufacturers to be part of that. We currently have 13 of 17 participating in this effort, and this is the leadership. So this is their executive director, or president of these associations that are coming together. And again, very similar to what the PAC does with the President's Leadership Advisory Council. These leaders share best practices, whether it be policies that they're, trying to mitigate within their states, whether it is additional funding that they're trying to make sure that manufacturers are receiving within state government. They share those best practices with one another. And then finally, our CAC, which is our Champions Advisory Council. This really is a dean or a vice president or, someone who is responsible at the community college. And they are the day-to-day person that we engage with for our imperative program. And they meet monthly. So our MAC meets every other month, our CAC meets monthly, and our President's Advisory Council meets quarterly. But interestingly, Steve, one of the things that you were talking about, challenges or lessons learned, one of the things that we're doing this year that we hadn't done previously is we're bringing the leadership from those 3 councils together. So now we're saying not only are we working things in isolation, but we're bringing that and braiding that together so that we understand how we can leverage each one of those expertise to make sure we're making an impact to our program.
It sounds like there's a new acronym in the works, a Mega Mac Pack CAC. So it seems like a natural fit, community colleges with small and mid-sized manufacturers, which of course make up the overwhelming bulk of the manufacturing industry. Are there unique needs for these types of both companies as well as these types of students that kind of merge together? And
yeah, that's a really great question. One of the things that we're learning from our small to mid-sized manufacturers is that, they're finding that just having individuals, their biggest issue, let me start with that, is really awareness of opportunities for individuals, how to go find them, but then how to retain them. It's really easy for some of our larger manufacturers with names like Boeing or, Tesla or someone along those lines to attract individuals. These small to medium, mid-sized manufacturers often don't have that notoriety in their community. And so one of the things we're trying to do is elevate the amazing work that's happening inside those 4 walls and opportunities not only for entry-level positions, but growth. And so it's kind of twofold. They have to know about them. Our small to mid-sized manufacturers need to get outside of their 4 walls, which is challenging for them. They typically run very lean, and so their ability then to engage with their community or engage with their community colleges or high schools, which is their path, their pipeline, is really challenging. So those are some of the things that we're finding is immediate needs. So it's not only, again, how do we not only get them the immediate frontline entry level qualified individuals, but how do we also help them then with building up their skills within that company and really supporting them across the board.
So did you find that there were common challenges and solutions across schools, regardless of size, focus, geographic location, how long they've been around, and in some cases, are they unique to different areas?
That is a great question. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know how you want to look at it, we did find some systemic barriers across our 25 institutions. And let me just briefly tell you how we went about doing that. As I said, this is a very thoughtful and research-based program. Each one of our colleges, we actually spent a significant amount of time with them when we launched the program. So we brought from their community, we brought stakeholders from economic development, from K-12, from veterans, from JII, anybody in the community-based organizations, employer partners. We actually brought them together, and we spent about 4 hours with them going through and asking them critical questions of where do they see opportunities to better align with workforce needs, and where do they see barriers. From that, we created a report for each one of our colleges. So our colleges have their own unique understanding of what industry is saying, what their community partners are saying, what their K-12 partners and their economic development, state leaders, everyone that was there, we were able to provide that back to them. We then created a strategic plan for each one of those colleges aligned to their own college's strategic plan. So now you've got manufacturing carved out, but aligned back to their overall and arching strategic plan for the college. So when we had all of those completed, we actually did, we brought all of that and aggregated together. And really, that's where we were able to understand where these systemic barriers were across our nation in those 17 states and 25 communities, but what were the uniquenesses of each one of those. And so we actually created then 4 insight studies that addressed the 4 major issues. It was basically understanding your demography and how to engage those different populations in your community, small to medium size manufacturers, and engaging with them. That was a huge concern across all of our colleges. How to better work within your own local workforce system, and building out a community sector strategy. That was another theme that we saw across all of them, where they needed additional support in that. And the other thing we brought to them was something kind of net new. We wanted to say, we think there's a better way of kind of reverse engineering and mitigating the risk of employers by reverse engineering the hiring practice. That seemed to be a big issue, and we've actually started testing that out at several of our colleges across our portfolio of institutions. So yes, there were current themes. The one thing I will just add to the end of that is that we also worked with our 3 advisory councils to create a roadmap for what are we going to be doing year 2. We're doing those studies and making sure that we're reporting that back to our colleges, but we also are looking at finding CTE faculty or individuals that from our industry that can come in and actually bring their expertise to our community colleges, really looking at how do we create better conversations and open lines of communication between employers and our colleges. Really are 2 additional focus areas that we'll spend a lot of time on this second year.
So reverse engineering the hiring process sounds very, very interesting. And I know how far along you are in this endeavor, but can you elaborate exactly what that means and entails, how you go about that?
Sure. Well, that's actually working with one of our partners, Cengage Ready to Hire. And one of the things that we know is whether you're using a staffing agency or whether you're trying to hire, you don't have that alignment to the real skill that the employer needs. This reverse engineering of this pathway to employment works directly on the front end with the employer to say, who do you need? How many of those individuals do you need? And what are the skill sets that they need to have in order to be productive day one when we get them, when we bring them to you? So in partnership with Cengage Ready to Hire and Tooling U SME, we've now been able to create a program that we identify individuals who would be interested in developing those skills. Working with the employer, we've aligned what are those skills and how do we leverage the amazing resources that Tooling U SME has to get someone ready. And so when that person goes through that process, usually about a 3-month process, they are actually aligned and designed for that employer partner. So when that person arrives at that employer partner, we then say we're going to make sure that they retain for 90 days. So this becomes at a no risk for that employer, because that employer, if they lose that person within the first 90 days, we're going to replace them. But more importantly, that person comes with the skills that have been identified by that employer.
Obviously, a lot of planning, well thought out effort going ahead of the launch and the initial run up. But what's been some of the successes over the first year, both at a macro level, across the colleges, as well as possibly at some individual schools?
Sure, I'm happy to share with you that while we didn't achieve our goal of 25,000 net new learners, but remember, while we started 1 year in, it really took us about 3 or 4 months, even maybe 5 months, to get everybody onboarded and everybody moving toward this goal. But I am happy to report that we had 17,802 net new individuals against our goal of 25,000. So we're very, very pleased. And I will say too, this was a challenge. This wasn't, we never set out to say we were going to achieve it, but I think we are well on our way to hitting our goal of 75,000 individuals trained by 3 years. Our colleges held 2,113 events that actually impacted 42,976 individuals. We had 54,774 individuals engaged through a marketing effort that we are actually deploying with several of our colleges. So this was just our initial 3 colleges that were pushing this initiative out. That's that demography and engagement study. And we're seeing great success with that and great awareness. As I said, we need to change the narrative on what manufacturing is. And we're learning based on these efforts what resonates with individuals. And then how can we better message to make sure that these our communities know what amazing opportunities there are in advanced manufacturing in their neighborhoods.
Definitely some amazing numbers that have already been achieved in the first year. As with anything, this is a work in progress. So I'm sure that you've learned a few things along the way, and maybe adapted. Any surprises or items that stand out?
Yeah, I do think one of the things is that we've just noticed is that we need to be better about engaging our colleges more frequently. So we've now aligned our team that the colleges now have a direct liaison. So we have our team grew from 3 of us to now we have 8 individuals on our team, and we are going to be there more frequently to really ferret out those best practices that our colleges are doing, sharing what we're learning from other colleges and bringing that more frequently to our colleges, and really understanding, I think, at that micro level what the needs are for each one of those communities. So we'll have much more opportunity to engage with the manufacturers in that area. We're holding roundtables. That's something that we started toward the end of the first year, bringing together, again, just the manufacturers to say, what are your needs? How best can we serve you? How can we get this information back to our colleges to say, this is the way in which you need it. It needs to be delivered to meet their needs. These are the skills that they're looking for, and really kind of bridging that conversation more thoughtfully.
And it helps students throughout their academic career, not just people coming in the first year, as well as people that are already enrolled, and what are some of the hot buttons for the students and some of the popular courses?
Well, welding, everybody knows, understands welding. So when that's when, we were talking about changing that narrative, we've noticed that if you throw out mechatronics, a lot of individuals don't know what that is. So we know that welding and programs that they understand, engineering, they know what those paths are. So they typically lead to those. So we have to get a better handle on how best to educate both educators in K-12 or in elementary school, making sure that they understand what career pathways that they have available to them, and also understanding what drives this next generation of workers, or what drives our adults to get back from the sidelines into employment. We need to talk about flexibility. We need to talk about how programs are delivered. We need to talk about just, aspirations of the value add that what manufacturing does, not just producing a widget or getting something on a truck, but it really is the meaningful value of parts that are created or going on the spaceship, parts that are created or are developing innovation that is going to lead our communities and our country forward. So that is a big effort that we need to change that narrative more than anything.
At the outset, you mentioned how you're trying to attract different groups of people, whether it's women, minorities, veterans, or others. What are some of the keys in this area? Just a matter of making it more awareness?
Absolutely. So again, it goes back to that start of, if you can't see yourself in that role, you're not going to track to that role. So how do we change that narrative? Some of it is policy. You think about JII, 62% of our colleges support second chance pathways to employment. But we need to make sure our industry partners understand, what does it mean to have a person who's had an entanglement with the justice system? Are there policies that are preventing them? These could be amazing talent that they could tap into. How do they make sure that they don't have policies that are preventing them from even getting past that initial, resume phase? It could be bringing in veterans or even women. How do you make sure that you understand their needs and make them feel welcomed in that environment? So some of this, again, I kind of talked back to, we're holding not only our community colleges accountable for making sure the programs align, we're holding our employer partners accountable to make sure that they have welcoming opportunities and that they are an employer of choice.
So now that the first year is under your belt, and we mentioned that it's a 3-year program, what's on tap for year 2 and year 3?
Year 2, well, again, we're taking all those the lessons learned from year 1 and making sure that we mitigate them for year 2. Our goal will be to hit our 25,000 individuals served or enrolled in those programs. I think we're really going to be focused on, again, some of those efforts that I mentioned, really identifying how industry partners can provide qualified faculty. How can we bridge that delta between what they would make in the industry versus what is offered to them as far as payment at a community college? Are there ways in which we can do that? Are there opportunities for increasing apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship opportunities to really make sure that there's direct alignment to longer term commitments from the industry to the individual to industry, as we start bridging these pathways?
Talked a lot about the workforce shortage and skills gap, but does the same thing apply on the educators' standpoint too? Is there a shortage there as well?
Absolutely. Qualified faculty, that is one of the biggest concerns that we hear from our community college, is that they're finding it difficult to attract a qualified faculty. So whether we're looking at faculty on loan from employer partners, whether we're looking at recent retirees that are willing to give back and build that next generation of workers, whether this is new, engineering students in their graduate program or even in their undergrad program, can we leverage them to come in and teach some of these entry-level positions? So we need to make sure that we are finding qualified individuals, not only from that institutional knowledge of being in the workforce for a very long time, but also those aspiring new, I think, influencers that we can then drive this next generation awareness of manufacturing.
It's a great initiative and with some amazing results already, and look forward to hearing more in coming years. But Deb, thanks again for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to talk with you and learning more about such an important initiative throughout the manufacturing industry.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
So if listeners want to learn more about the program and the report, where can they go?
They can go to sme.org/workforce development.
And to learn more about the latest manufacturing trends and hear more of our podcasts, visit advancedmanufacturing.org. And be sure to like and subscribe to our feed.